Welcome back. Thank you so much for choosing to tune in on this Tuesday. I know I say it every Tuesday, but it really does matter to us, especially when we broach a conversation as important as this. World No Tobacco Day. There is actually a day, and what a day to be commemorated. It's on the 31st of May, and this year the focus is on tobacco and lung health. Makes a lot of sense. So here to help us unpack the dangers of smoking and how to quit. Most importantly, please welcome our trusted medical professional, Dr. Darren, who is joined by Dr. Richard van Zyl-Smit, consultant pulmonologist and head of smoking cessation at Groote Schuur Hospital, which means he's there to help you stop smoking, basically, and probably knows a lot more than most about why we should be stopping smoking. Doc, love it. Love it when you bring your friends along as well. This is such an important day. One wonders why we all smoke, why it is such a part of the human condition, but there is so much motivation to stop, and I think it starts with what happens to your lungs when you smoke. So maybe, Doc, I can start with you. What happens to the lung when you smoke a cigarette?
Well, I mean, simply just think about your braai fire. When you light your braai fire, there's smoke. So the first thing you do is you cough. The little hairs in your lungs that are there to clear out get burnt by the hot air. Then your body tries to protect itself, so it produces mucus, the chronic cough that smokers get. And then your lungs just go into overdrive to try and stop all of this poisonous smoke from destroying themselves.
So we've got the immediate knock-on effect of the smoke. Then we've got all the wonderful range of chemicals and preservatives and all the things that that come inside that tiny little death stick. What are some of the health risks of continued smoking? What can it result in?
Yeah, well...
obviously, there's one major...
You know, everyone focuses on the association with the different cancers, and everyone thinks lung cancer right at the top of the list, but actually, in fact, it's an array of cancers, from throat and oral cancers, esophageal cancers, even pancreas cancer that's associated with smoking in terms of triggering the genes that get the cancer going. And then, of course, we look at things like chronic disease in the lung and the spectrum of disease, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, so COPD, emphysema, bronchitis, asthma-associated conditions, recurrent infections, TB, the associated comorbids. And then, of course, a funny one that we spoke about just before was the wrinkling of the skin. And premature aging.
Premature wrinkling. That's probably, and it's ridiculous, knowing the human condition and how our minds work, that's probably one of the biggest motivators to stop. Never mind it could kill you.
Correct.
But it's going to age you prematurely.
And then circulation issues is really big on the list as well. In
heart
terms
attack.
Of,
yeah, I was going to say, does that
big
lead
ones,
into the... Because we know that basically ill heart health is probably the biggest killer on the planet at the moment.
Yeah.
So those two correlate. What if I'm only having one or two? I'm a social smoker. I have a couple of cigarettes every now and then, you know, maybe with a coffee or a drink when I'm out with my mates. How damaging is that? Is there a difference?
So it very much depends which disease you're aiming to prevent. So if you're looking at...
on the very long list.
On the long list. So if you're looking at cancer, for example, it's pretty much the more you smoke, the higher your risk, because it's a cancer-causing drug. The less of the cancer-causing drug you take in, the lower your risk. So that's pretty much straightforward. The less supply and demand type. But when it comes to cardiovascular disease, respiratory disease, it gets a little bit more blurry, and even one or two a day sets off a different pathway of inflammation and atherosclerosis and hypertension. So yes, smoking 2 a day is not as bad as smoking 20, but ideally you want to smoke nothing.
Why do we rely on cigarettes as a crutch? We know that the nicotine and the various kind of chemical components are clearly addictive, but it almost feels like a physical crutch that people lean on. Why is it so difficult to quit smoking?
Yeah, you put it so succinctly because, I mean, it is a crutch. There's often an underlying reason or behavior, once again, things that we were discussing before, and that lead you to want to try a cigarette. And obviously your persona type, your lifestyle, your levels of stress, and all that all plays an important role in directing you to the place of looking for different crutches. Some people use alcohol, some people turn to gambling, for example, as well. And all of them obviously cripple. So this one, unfortunately, can shorten your lifespan quite significantly.
I'm going to get into exactly how much it can damage your health, but also how quickly, because I understand as well that just making a change can bring about a massive shift in the positive direction, and you can make that change today. So we'd love to hear from you on our social media platforms. Please don't phone. The lines aren't open this morning, but we will address questions and comments on our social media platforms. Have you been able to quit smoking? How did you do it?
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
I can speak from personal experiences. The times where I've grappled with something like this, family, friends, a baby, doing something for someone else often is a great motivator. It's weird how we can't just do something because we understand it and it makes sense. But we are fighting, I think, probably one of the biggest physical addictions, clearly, because it's so difficult to beat. Where do we start? Do we go to a program? Do we take medication? Do we just go cold turkey? In your experience, Doc, as a specialist in this space, what's the best way to quit smoking?
So as a true physician, the answer is yes.
Yes to everything.
All of,
do it all.
All of the above. All of the above. I think the most important thing to understand is that there's a balance between the habit and the addiction. And so there's no question that nicotine is highly addictive. It gives you withdrawal symptoms. And so for certain people, you need medication to cover the withdrawal. But for the majority of people, and certainly our experience from our clinic at Groote Schuur, it's the behavioral side. I'm stressed, I grab my cigarettes. The neighbors are shouting and screaming, the kids are upsetting me, I grab a cigarette. I've lost my job, I smoke. I'm worried about finances, I'm worried about my health, I'm worried about anything. And it's if you can't deal with that side, can you cope with life without your cigarette? That's often the starting point. And then we'll get on to, do you need medication? And some
so do you replace it with another thing? Like, have a sip of a bottle of water? When you, like, from that physical perspective, how do you rewrite? Because it's a neural pathway, surely. It's something that needs to be redirected. How do you do that?
That's the biggest challenge, is that there's no one size fits all. Yeah. That for some people, 20 a day, I decide tonight I'm going to stop. Tomorrow morning I quit, no problem. I've got patients in my clinic that are smoking 2 a day and just cannot get rid of 2. So we're complex humans. The water, the cigarette, the chewing gum, eating sweets, Pilates, yoga, you name it.
A little boxing, that's also a good motivator, man.
Whatever it takes is probably worth it, provided it's not worse than the smoking and provided it doesn't cost a fortune.
We've obviously been asking people, and this is something really cool. Megan Slubbert saying, good morning, Expresso. Morning, Megan. I was a smoker, then my pregnancy test showed positive and all smiles, and I stopped immediately. Now the smell of cigarettes makes me nauseous. Yep. You've seen it with drinking, with so many things, but when a woman, first of all, how dangerous is smoking for a pregnant woman? Let's just dispel any misnomer there.
There's a strong association, obviously, with preterm labor, but also placental insufficiency. That means the blood supply, obviously, to your fetus and connecting the placenta to the baby in terms of feeding the baby, that can be compromised, and your baby could grow at a rate that's too slow and have a retarded growth pattern. So that's why, very good, and often the nausea that she describes is often your body's natural way of keeping out toxins from a pregnant mom. When there's danger involved, it's amazing how many natural mechanisms you have to actually steer you away from it.
Just a switch gets flicked.
Yep.
We've got Craig Wilburn saying, I was a binge smoker, which is more damaging. Is that, when you're going out there, we mentioned the social smoker vibe, if you're going out for a big night, having a drink with the mates, that's often where someone who doesn't smoke will pick one up. Is that more dangerous, kind of binging on the chemical side?
Again, it depends which danger you're looking at. In terms of total volume, again, your total exposure is probably less. I wouldn't consider it more or less dangerous. I would just consider it bad. Any cigarettes are bad. But that's very common, the trigger, in that particular situation. And so I've said to quite a few of my patients that see me, say, well, maybe you need to stop drinking for a month or two. If you can't, if smoking and drinking are so close together, maybe that's what it's going to take. Don't ignore your friends, but go and drink water or tea or coffee.
I like your bedside manner. Maybe. Just saying, I'm going to let you come to this conclusion yourself. But perhaps.
But you're right there, Graham, because it's not what I say. It's your issue. It's your cigarettes. You're the one that needs to come up with the ideas. And so we often, it's more important for you to come up with the reason why you want to quit than for me to come with some dangerous, well, here's a picture of lung cancer, now you must stop smoking. It's the internal motivation that's more important.
Are you doctors, surgeons, or psychologists? It's a difficult line you're walking when it comes to smoking. And what I want you to think about now is that turnaround, how quickly you can recover and your body can start de-aging once we stop smoking. But I'm going to put that to both of you. And again, you can keep sharing those comments, questions, advice for quitting smoking. We'd love to hear from you. We'll see you in a moment.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
I don't know how we're going to pick up after that one. Love could be the motivator. That could be the very personal motivator, and that seems to be what it's about. It's about finding something that works for you. And we're not being preachy here. We're not being judgy. We're all about turning the tide and helping you get to a point where you can actually make the shift. Unfortunately, at the moment, many people think quitting smoking is taking up e-cigarettes or vaping, or it's an alternative that seems healthier, is it?
It's a,
I see you dodged that bullet there, Doc. Yeah.
No, we spoke about this. We spoke about it.
it's a very complicated subject, and probably I could spend the entire day talking. The short answer is that if you're breathing fresh air, vaping is a whole lot worse. You've got a 50% chance of dying if you smoke a cigarette. Vaping is likely to be a whole lot safer. But when you've got a 50% chance of dying from cigarettes, being safer is not really a high bar to jump over.
Yeah.
It may help you quit smoking. There are certainly better ways. But at the end of the day, if standing in the corner on your head singing the national anthem helps you quit smoking, there may be no evidence for that. But if it helps you, go for it.
It's the first step, maybe, that's great, but just know that it's not necessarily the healthy option. Might be slightly healthier, but okay, maybe lay it down for me. Which is more dangerous, cigarette, e-cigarette, hookah pipe, or a vape?
In very quickly off the top of my head, cigarettes definitely. Hookah pipe is exactly the same as tobacco, no question about that.
Okay.
It's tobacco,
Ooh,
it's
okay.
not safe, end of story.
Yeah.
Vaping, e-cigarettes are probably safer. The big debate is how much safer. But it depends what you're comparing it to. Compared to fresh air,
And a cigar,
definitely
is it
more-
like a cigar, surely a cigar must be like the most dangerous thing ever.
Cigars, interestingly, because you tend to hold the smoke in your mouth, gives you a lot of
lungs.
oral cancer, less other systemic diseases. But at the end of the day, fresh air is what
better.
you want.
And when you mention these oral and throat cancers, and some of they're the most pervasive, the most, they are so, in every cancer is just devastating and awful to even think about, but these are some of the worst cancers that you can broach. One last misnomer maybe to dispel from my side. If you've been smoking your whole life, is it dangerous to quit? Will that shock, like with many other addictions, is that not more dangerous for your system to quit?
But on which day of smoking for 30 years is the cancer gene triggered? That is the question. So no matter where you stop, it can't take off your life. It can only add longevity to your life. So it's as simple as that.
So is there a danger associated to quitting smoking if you've smoked a lot?
Not from a life, it's not going to kill you, let's put it that way. But certainly, when you stop smoking, your body starts responding to that. So, for example, if you think about what happens, if you stop smoking immediately now,
Boom.
within 12 hours, your carbon monoxide, that's the stuff that comes out your exhaust pipe of your car and your cigarette.
That's killing our planet, yeah.
That goes down in your lungs, the oxygen levels come up. Within 24 to 48 hours, you smell better, and you can smell better.
More
so
friends.
food tastes better. And then
The love that we were talking about will start to
Absolutely.
return to your life.
And then within a year or so, your cardiovascular stroke risk drops. And then within 4 to 5 years, the cancer risk starts coming down dramatically. And at about 10 to 15 years, your risk of cancer is actually that pretty much of a non-smoker. So the long-term benefits are huge, but the 24, 48
and the positive
hours...
benefits kick in so much faster and than the negative. That's the thing here. You might think that you're caught in the grips of something that you're not in control of because of the physical element of it. But the positive physical spin-offs are just as powerful. Let's talk about that motivation when it comes to the people that you care about and maybe even just the citizens around you. How damaging is secondhand smoke?
Well, it also has a carcinogenic effect in terms of the inflammatory and the irritating effect of smoking on the lungs. And what a lot of people don't know about is tertiary smoking. So you even get that where you have sediment or residue
Particles,
on your curtains, on your countertops at home.
Well, there's a reason why you stink of smoke after you've smoked a cigarette. That's the...
Correct.
Knowing what we know about smoking, your personal attachment, I think maybe I'll start with you, Doc, because you get to see people, sportsmen, living their best life. You get to see, people living within their bodies in the most positive way. Why should a person stop smoking today? Why make that choice and just do it?
Yeah, if not for yourself, to live a more fruitful and get the highest degree of performance from your entire meat box and physical machine.
So romantic when you say it like
then
that.
for the people that you care about and love, I mean, you increasing your risk of dying too soon. And that means obviously being around as a father, a brother, a friend, a son, with the people you love and care about. So, I mean, there are motivations from all sides to get you to a point where you need to evaluate what are the highest priorities in your life.
Yeah, and if you can't do it for yourself, do it for your kids especially. You've chosen to make it your life's work to help people stop smoking. Why?
It's a long story that how I got into it, but it's it's a natural part of what I do. I'm a lung specialist. I deal with people with lung disease. Smoking causes a whole lot of lung diseases outside of just straightforward lung cancer and emphysema. And it's a passion. I've never smoked myself, but I've heard enough stories to know everyone's story. And it's really interesting to try and, as the doctor, as the service provider, as it were, to try and get the most out of you to say, how can I help you quit? Because at the end of the day, it's not my issue, it's your issue. And can I help you overcome this? And that for me brings huge satisfaction. Not always successful, but we never give up trying.
Yeah, well, that's the thing I think is just start the process.
Absolutely.
What's the first step? Now that hopefully we've got a legion of people out there going, actually, you know what? Today might be the day that saves my life. What is the first step to quitting smoking?
Yeah, I think firstly you need to know that you have a problem. You must have a desire to want to change the habit, change the pathway that you've gone down already, and also what legacy you want to leave behind in terms of an example and role model you want to be to those around you. In terms of smoking, as you mentioned earlier on, there's behavior modification that needs to occur, but there's also the chemical withdrawal in some patients, but not all patients, that we look at. I don't know if you want to add to
Yeah, I mean,
that.
I think for me, I use the term exit strategy.
Yeah.
So you finish this interview and you were going to go and have a cigarette, do something different. How are you going to change that habit? What are you going to do instead?
The Theresa May effect, we'll call it. We'll just start
Go
thinking about
bounce a
different
ball,
plans.
go chew some chewing gum,
Yeah,
do
exactly.
push-ups, whatever it is, but decide what is it that I'm going to do instead of having that cigarette. Because it's too easy to grab a cigarette because you know it helps. To find that little thing that I'm going to do instead and know what it is. So when that where's my cigarette comes up, I go, I'm going to go bounce a ball, I'm going to go for a run, I'm going to go for a walk. That's, I think, the important thing to decide, because those cravings will come. Those stressful situations will come, guaranteed, and it's to have that exit strategy.
I would suggest replace it with something that does reinforce a positive self-image, something like starting to run, starting to train, maybe do a bit of boxing, do something that makes you feel better about yourself.
Absolutely.
Is such a great way to break that cycle.
Correct.
But the most important thing to realize is it is actually a choice. It's a choice that you can make right now, right today. Don't wait until next year's no tobacco day to do it. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I think we've hopefully all learned a huge amount, and hopefully just one of those little seeds has been planted. I think Dr. Darren Green used a few bigger words than you this morning, but we definitely look forward to welcoming you both back this morning. Hopefully you guys have found that a very helpful resource. Please continue to give us that advice. If you've been able to stop smoking, what was that key to your success? Share those thoughts on our Facebook page.